Hello, and welcome back to the Clear Voice podcast. I'm your host, James Groom. Today, we've got a special podcast for you. We're going to talk about why Clear recruits differently, the Clear model. With us today is President Michael Bays. Michael, how's it going?
Doing great, James, and thanks for having me on.
Of course. This podcast, we want to talk about a little bit of what Clear does and more importantly, why Clear does the things that it does. I believe you were the founder or co-founder of the company. So tell us the history, the origins, and why we're even here today.
Well, it's a great opportunity to talk about Clear and really just put out there exactly kind of what our history is. I think serving almost 3 decades in municipal government in different positions and having the opportunity to work with some really amazing people and for some great communities throughout my career. The thing I always kind of noticed was how the recruitment process was handled by external recruiters. And I had the opportunity to be in charge of recruiting for the Plano Police Department for a while and kind of got my hands on the recruiting process and really understood a little bit about what's in the market and how to recruit individuals. And then as we were going through our career, I'd connected with several other people who had a passion for people and saw that there in the space was the ability to do some amazing things. And so when I retired from Wimberley, I was able to connect with Deanna Hendricks, who was at that time with the Texas Workforce Commission, and Kent Myers, a long-serving city manager of over 40 years in different places, was retiring from Fredericksburg. We started talking about establishing a recruiting and consulting firm. And then, quickly thereafter, Kelly Kinsler, who had retired from Leon Valley and done some other city management work and had worked in the state of New Mexico as a state director, had a lot of experience. And so we connected, really quickly and came together and, sort of the founding model that we really look at as kind of our core values is, being a candidate focused company. And I know everybody out there will say, well, yeah, everybody's candidate focused, but we really mean it. One thing that sets us apart definitely is when we are going through a recruitment process, I think there's a lot of mental energy from the time that you decide you want to apply for a position and you take the time to craft your resume and cover letter and actually submit your name. There's a piece of mental energy that flows along with that. And a lot of times you're sitting there and you're wondering where you're at in the recruitment process. Is it something that you're going to, be doing in the next, month or 2 or 3? Do you have to start looking at moving? If you own a home, are you going to be selling your home? And so all those things are kind of processing through your mind. And frequently what we experienced even in our own professional journeys was, recruiting firms and even sometimes cities, wouldn't get back with you. You may, go through the process. You may even make it to a point where you do an interview or two, and then you just don't hear anything. And as time goes on and the more engaged you get in the process, it becomes more and more mental energy that's being put into the thing. And at the end of it, you kind of just maybe receive an email or maybe don't receive anything at all. Maybe you just see that they hired somebody, posted on social media, and you feel disingenuous about the process. And you then have a negative experience because you weren't treated like you would treat somebody if they had applied for a job with your organization. And so when we really looked at that, we wanted to put the candidate first. Here at Clear Career Professionals, we call every candidate every week, or at least we strive to by phone, and make sure that they're updated about the process. If we can't reach them, we shoot them an email, keeping them, informed. And then when the hiring entity makes decisions about who's moving forward or who's not moving forward, we'll try to make a phone call again and have that conversation to where people always know where they stand. If that was just one of the differences alone, I think that's huge. And kind of going back to that basic principle of treating other people like we would like to be treated. And I think that's kind of one of our core values that remains true to this day. And the other thing is the high cost of recruitment for cities. I know when I was serving in an executive role, it would have been great to have an external recruiter come in and help us get candidates and kind of do the marketing and lead the recruitment effort. But they were so expensive, especially if you're working for a medium or small size community. They were almost priced out of your budget. And so a lot of times we would do our own recruitments. We wanted to build a model that was, as efficient as possible to where we could offer cities the most economical price we possibly could. So kind of, marching on with those two kind of core values, we've served over the last 3 years in over 80 different, communities across the country. It's been a great process. And I don't think that there's ever a firm that does everything perfectly, but we strive to try to do things as good as we can. And then when we, hear that there's a potential area for improvement, we definitely try to address that.
I've seen some of the cost of public recruiting out there, and it's some of it's astronomical, and you're asking some very small cities to pay 20-25% what the actual job pays to go in and recruit somebody, and that prices a lot of cities out. And the smaller cities, sometimes even if you don't price them out, if it doesn't go perfectly and they don't get exactly what they're looking for, they're mad and they don't want to use a recruiter again because they could have done a better job for $0. But the reality of the situation is it is hard to find the right candidate. And some of these job fields right now, city managers, a tight job market, finance, even public works. So having somebody that can go out there and that has the network that Clear does, I think would be important for even smaller cities.
Yeah, and frequently it's the smaller cities that need the help the most. They don't have, one or two or three or 10 people in HR that can, really sit there and focus on recruiting and then, managing the candidates and kind of understanding exactly how to get the best people in those positions. So, yeah, I think offering a model that, we can come in and offer some assistance, to those communities and really hopefully just help them get somebody in place that can journey with them and be collaborative and really take the organization to the next level is very rewarding for myself and everybody involved in our company.
Yeah. And you talk about negative experiences that candidates have. And obviously, if you're using a recruiting firm, that negative feeling may get turned on to the recruiting firm, but it also, in some of these candidates' eyes, reflect poorly on the city itself, especially if the candidate feels like this company always does things like this. And so, even though Clear's not the city that they are recruiting for, they're also a representative of them. And, we want to make a good impression because we want the candidates to not take away something negative against the cities that we serve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in my personal experience, it's communication. It makes all of the difference. In those times when I didn't get a position, if people communicated with me and let me know that I wasn't selected, and they did that in a fair amount of time. And then maybe even if there's something that they noticed that I could be doing better, they could point out and go, hey, there's this little thing you could either tweak on your resume or in your career journey that could really make all the difference. And that communication level really, I think inspires you to put in for another position. But it's those times when you go through and maybe have no communication, or maybe they've set up false expectations and then, don't follow through, that, it really leaves a mark on you. And then I think it discourages good people from maybe seeking other opportunities where they could serve, better or in greater roles because, they just don't want to go through a process that isn't either equitable, or they feel like they're not going to be coming out with a good level of communication from the effort they put in.
Yeah, I agree. When Clear got set up, one of the things that I appreciated is the company looked at how other places were recruiting and what the standard quo was as far as processes. Some things probably are the same, but there's a lot of things. I know one of those things that we've talked about before is, and I don't know if they're still using it, but one or more companies use a one-way interview. So you get the questions that flash up on the screen and you have to talk, just virtually back to this machine at your house, and it goes to the recruiter and they kind of flesh through it. And of course, that takes out the human element of interaction and two-way communication. When even though this is audio only, I can see you while we're talking, and you're nodding along, and that's encouraging me to keep talking. So can you talk about some of those things as far as how the processes were set up? There's also companies, while I think Clear embraces technology, there's also some companies that turn most of the process over to technology, and maybe they're missing some things because they're using too much technology.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, James. And one thing we wanted to do when we kind of set up Clear Career and that being candidate focused is a couple of things. I think first and foremost, you need to make it as easy as possible for candidates to apply. I think these places who require you to fill out extensive application either online or even sometimes for some smaller communities handwritten, and then they also require require, you to turn in a resume. Like even on the police side, there are some agencies out there that are having executives fill out the entire TCOL background packet as part of the application process. And I don't know about you, but when I was, full-time working for communities, I didn't have a ton of extra time to sit and fill out a large packet, especially when I didn't even know if I was going to be considered as a candidate or getting an interview. That's kind of what the first thing we wanted to do was make it easy to apply for the positions. We ask that people submit a resume. We don't always require them to do a cover letter, but we definitely encourage it. And I always tell people a cover letter isn't a written synopsis of your resume. It's kind of the ability to get in and talk about how your skill sets can impact the organization and or the position that you're putting in for, and hopefully the community that you're wanting to work with, and do that in a summation of naturally talking about your skill sets, but like I said, not making sure it's not just repeating the same information. But once we make it easy to apply and we're able to move candidates on to that semifinalist round that is a virtual interview with our team. In my experience, and a lot of candidates that I've talked with, the one-way interviews are just very impersonal. Throughout our career journeys, especially in the public sector, frequently we are successful because we're good at communicating with other people. When you put me in front of a green screen and there's nobody else to communicate with, I always really struggled with that because there wasn't somebody, like you said, that's giving me that nonverbal feedback, or maybe there's an answer that I could give that needs a little bit more explanation or dive deeper into what my career journey has been. And when there's nobody on the other side of the interview, it's hard to get that done. What we do is we pair up the candidates with 3 people who've typically served in the role that they're applying for. So if you've applied for a chief of police position, there'll be active or former chiefs of police on that 30-minute virtual interview. Or if you're applying for a public works director, the same. And those people can hear what you're talking about in your career journey and then hopefully help you open the scope of information to where it's putting your best foot forward, and then being able to provide those videos to the hiring entity and letting them kind of analyze and see what the fits are. And I think it works really well. I'll tell every candidate before we start any type of interview recording, hey, we're facilitators and we want to really get you to put your truest and best self forward. That's kind of what our goal is on those semifinalist interviews. But yeah, I think again, when we boil it down here at Clear, we're about, the people and what the experience is. And I'll take a little bit from Marcel Brunel here since he's got a new book and Dignity and Leadership coming out. How are people feeling about the interaction that you have with them? What emotion do they experience when we interact with folks, particularly on something so major as a recruitment that's going to impact their lives, their families' lives, their entire career journey? We want them, walking away feeling that they were valued and that the experience overall was a really positive thing for them.
A wise man once reminded me of a quote, and I'm going to probably butcher it, but something about how they'll never remember what you said, but they'll always remember how it made them feel. I think that was Maya Angelou.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think it was you that reminded me about it. We said we would not mention any names, but there seems to be some recurring issues that consistently pop up with traditional recruiters, from confidentiality issues to questions about the transparency of the process. One major city recently hired a recruiter for a city manager job, and when they got the draft brochure back, it had the wrong city's skyline on the cover. What does Clear do to try not to make some of those same mistakes?
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot of times in the corporate world, especially kind of understanding more and more about that as I've been in that sector, is a lot of times it's much more about process than the actual client or people you're working with. And I think a lot of these companies get established and start looking at the profit, and you're looking at, hey, how can we get the most revenue in and then make it as cheap as possible on one end so that the profit is maximized. I think that they're a lot more likely to miss things, because if it's all about generating numbers and then trying to get as many clients and as many jobs as you possibly can, I think you miss a piece of the pie, in the sense that what we do is very collaborative and very personal, and we're not just trying to get as many recruitments as we possibly can. And I think that's kind of where it makes it a little bit easier for us to try to avoid some of those mistakes. I think also the ability to be flexible and adaptable. And I actually have a chapter in my book that'll be hopefully coming out later this year talking about the importance of adaptability in municipal leadership. I think it applies also to the work that we do as consultants and as recruiters. The podcast that we're doing right now is an innovative thing. I think we're probably one of the the first recruiting and consulting firms that is launching these position podcasts that we're going to be doing with as many of our partners as we possibly can. And I think that's kind of our vision for the traditional recruitment brochure is out there, and there's some good information in there, but do people really have the time to sit and read a 5 to 10 page document? And should that be the first way that they get information about a recruitment, working through the Clear Voice and giving people the opportunity to hear about the recruitments, and also getting an opportunity to understand who you're going to be working with or maybe who you're going to be reporting to. Getting to interview the employer before you actually apply for the job, I think, is the trend of the future. And I think we continue to be innovative and adaptive and really responsive to the needs of the industry. And I think those are important things that really help us generate a number of candidates above, maybe some other traditional recruitment methods, because we're willing to get out there and let people know exactly what the positions look like, and not always trying to just put a positive spin on it, but really telling them what work needs to be done and the challenges that they'll face. I know a lot of professionals, look at challenges as an opportunity. And so, I think, when you don't, give the full frontal view of kind of understanding what's going to be impacted once they arrive in the position, you actually negate some candidates who would love to take on that challenge.
Yeah, and those are sometimes the best people, is those ones that do want that challenge, and that's really who you want, is somebody looking for problems to solve. Most positions have those. If you're not putting them out there, you might not be capturing the people that actually want to come in and fix things. I know you talked about some of the co-founders, but there's one that, other than you, he's my favorite, just because I think he's got the most interesting job right now. I think we're allowed to talk about what he's doing now, and I know you know who I'm talking about. I'm just watching you. So can we talk about Kent and give a little more information about where he came from and what he's doing now?
Yeah, and Kent has been a blessing as part of our company and being one of our co-founders. I got to meet Kent because Kent's extended family lives in Wimberley. So when I was city manager in Wimberley, and Kent was the city manager of Fredericksburg, which, in Texas, if you're talking about travel destinations, especially in the Hill Country, you're probably going to mention those two cities. But we were able to become friends in that time period, and we both happened to be retiring around the same time. And Kent had extensive service as a city manager, much more than I did, over 40 years of leading communities. He was the first city manager of the city of Converse years ago, and that was, I think, his first city management job or thereabouts. And bringing Kent on and just the professionalism, his PhD level education, just the ability to really establish us as one of the premier leadership and recruiting firms in the country right from the get-go. But we were approached late last year by a small company that people probably haven't heard too much about, called SpaceX. And, we had presented Kent as the offering to serve as the city's first city manager, as they were, trying to go out for a vote and establish what is now the city of Starbase. Kent has led that effort and been working, closely with the community and still is serving as their first city manager for the city of Starbase. And I think it's really exciting for us because we've been in that conversation of, establishing, one of these communities that's going to probably be an eventual spaceport, hopefully, as things go well. It's not all the time that you get to look at a community that's not already established as a municipal corporation and kind of work through those processes. Kent has been leading that effort and then relying on our team from time to time to provide insight or direction into the different things. Maybe it could be finance or public safety. And once the city was established, we also were able to place the city's first city secretary there in Caroline Cole, and we continue to work there. But I thought what an amazing legacy for somebody who has dedicated his life to public service, of being able to not only be the first city manager in Converse, Texas, which is one of the premier suburbs of the San Antonio area, but also wrapping up the twilight of his career by establishing the first spaceport and the city of Starbase. We're honored that we get to be a part of that, and honored that Kent's a part of our team.
Just for the record, since we're here and putting this down, he did promise us a tour and get to watch a launch, and that hasn't happened. So if Kent's listening to this, he still owes all of us one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think the plans are to continue those launches for the near future. So I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to get in and do that. And James, I think that also is really important to point out that, when Kent went down there, he was able to, bring his knowledge of collaborating with other communities. And the city of Brownsville has been a really, really important partner in the establishment of Starbase and the services in the community, as well as the county folks that he's been connecting with. And I think it kind of all goes back to when you're hiring a firm or bringing people in, it's important that they have had that experience of how do you build those collaborative networks and really move, in this case, a proposition forward to, achieve a goal that's good for the people in the community.
I think that's amazing. So enough about Kent because he's going to get too big of a head if we talk about him any longer. Who else we got on the bench that the people need to know about?
Yeah, well, it's been great over the last few years. God has been really good to us. The funny thing, James, is we haven't done a lot of recruiting to bring people into Clear as part of our team. As you know, I'm a person of faith, and I believe that God has brought those people into our company. Over the last 3 years, we've grown to a company that's over 20 people, and all 20 of them have an amazing, journey and leadership story. And just did a post on LinkedIn talking about our, municipal executives that are a part of our team. And, we have myself and Kent and Kelly, but we've recently opened an office in Montana. And that's being led by Mark Shrives. And, Mark has a distinguished career in the military as lieutenant colonel, and then, served as, an important leader in FEMA, and then served as a city manager in several states up in the Northwest, and retired from that and is now a part of our team. And then most recently, we just added Leanne Gallman, who years and years of experience as a city secretary and city manager up in the South Plains and Panhandle region of West Texas. We would be amiss not to mention a friend of ours in James Hopper, who spent, decades leading school districts here in Texas. He's an amazing leadership coach and an amazing man. I know he'll be having some books come out next year that'll hopefully be impactful for people. But just even on the municipal executive side of things, we have, kind of that amazing team. And then, when we start talking about public safety, and you start talking about people like Danny Kistner, who is nationally renowned for his work in fire executive leadership and what he's doing for the Fallen Firefighters Association, and just having the voice out there to really impact the firefighting community. And, we've added Jeff Spivey, who in the police world, after all of his accomplishments for the city of Irving and doing the Caruth Police Institute, and then, his work in law enforcement, mental health. Those are all such amazing individuals. And just to even augment that, we brought on Dell Albright, who is a retired fire chief as well. And, I think the one person I really, really need to talk about is Brian Beasley as well. Brian, HR director of over 40 years experience in the private and government sector. He's able to get in and really do a lot of our comp studies and a lot of our HR related activities that really impact communities throughout the country. But there are a number of other people that I could mention, but I think everybody gets a picture that we have the most amazing team. And, I think if people were to jump on our website and see everybody that's listed on there and their ability to serve communities, it's a really amazing group of people that we get to be associated with.
I'm amazed when we have our, weekly meetings and get to see some of these names that, I've heard throughout the years coming up, and just know that, oh, well, they're here. I could ask them any question. And I sometimes do because I still have lots of things to learn for myself. So it's a pretty amazing opportunity to be able to have all those people in the same virtual room.
I think you nailed it, James, in the sense that every one of those individuals, even though they've had amazing careers, they're still trying to learn themselves. Nobody involved in the company has reached a point where we feel like we've achieved all of the things that we need to achieve or have obtained all of the growth or personal ability to just make ourselves better. And I think that's that hunger that keeps us all really striving to do more and more, not only for ourselves, but for the communities that we serve.
Let's talk a little bit about the clear model. I think you've talked a lot about what we do and why we do it. That clear communication with applicants, being proactive, the respect and dignity of not just the client, the city usually, but also all the applicants. Some that apply and they don't need any of the qualifications, but they still need a respectful email or phone call saying, not this time, you haven't been selected. We do the digital outreach, the personalized candidate engagement. Other than recruiting, what other services does Clear provide?
It's really amazing the opportunity we get to serve communities in so many different roles. One of the things that has happened over the last year is our organizational reviews have really started to pick up because of the quality leaders that we have associated with our firm. Those organizations and or departments where you maybe have a good staff, or maybe there's just a strategy there and you're not really sure how you're not achieving the goals that you've set out for the organization. Bringing somebody in from our team to kind of give an outside perspective of an org review to see what's going on in the organization. And a lot of times even taking a look at the culture and kind of understanding how that culture works. And hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the ability to get in and really provide kind of a 360 snapshot of what's going on in the organization, and then provide that to the team leaders and managers and things that are responsible for that work group, I think is really an amazing tool. And we can do that with the leaders we have. And also the clear way is to try to do that again at a price that communities can afford. We're not getting in and trying to do some $30,000 report for you that you're going to have a tough time affording and or a tough time explaining to the community why you need it. I think what we try to do is get in and be impactful on cost, and then also provide a lot of really great information. That's one product that's working really great. And then we'll do the council retreats. I think that's really something that we're a lot of people in our organization are passionate about. And that's making sure that our elected bodies and or our teams that we're working with are functioning properly. So we can get in and do just a council retreat or a council and executive staff retreat and make sure that everybody's on the same page and, able to outline the goals and then kind of outline a plan going forward. And that works out really well. Our compensation studies with Brian Beasley and what he's got going on there is something that's taken advantage of by a lot of communities. The cool thing about Clear is if you've got a problem going on in your organization or have a need that needs to have an outside partner, we can probably help in any way possible. With the 20 folks we've got the experience to probably get in and assist in a lot of ways. So we do a lot of different things. For instance, in the city of Garland, we help the mayor and council provide an annual evaluation for the council appointees. And that's, something that we love doing for such an amazing organization. And I know the city manager over there is just a great guy, and Justin Rex, and doing a lot of great things for Garland. But it's the ability to get in and serve in whatever capacity communities needs, I think, that really sets us apart.
One of the things you didn't mention is interim placement. So if somebody has a need for short-term city secretary or city manager, police chief, basically any of those executive roles, Clear has the ability to place somebody that will take care of your community. And then you mentioned a little bit about training, but just training in general, leadership training, and like you said, basically anything that somebody thinks that they need.
Yeah. And we've got a strong group of interim folks. Like I think right now we've got 4 or 5 people that are serving as interims in different roles. And we just placed the city manager down in Freeport on an interim basis. And I was actually down there recently getting ready to kick off that recruitment for the full-time city manager positions. I think it's amazing to be able to have the deep bench of retired folks that aren't maybe working full-time for Clear or aren't part of our active company, but remain available to serve communities in need. The cool thing that's recently happened, James, is we put together a team that is able to do comprehensive plans for communities. There's a group of folks who we're submitting proposals for comprehensive plans, and we have an amazing team of individuals who can do that. That's just, one of the things where when we started the company, we didn't maybe have that on our radar as a need, but we have, people within the organization who have done really great comprehensive plans or a lot of different services, and we're able to offer those to communities.
Inside of the Clear model, you talked a little bit about the podcast and what we're doing with it. And so basically we've created this. So we want to do a little bit of training and provide some outside experts to come in and talk about some of the problems. And then in addition to that, we'll do the position podcast where we're advertising on the role and kind of bringing the brochure to life is my understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the podcast is really a way for our folks to get out and still be impactful in a way where just as somebody's driving down the road listening to podcasts, they're able to get some really great information and maybe either help solve a problem or just even themselves help themselves grow in a skill set that they're trying to always learn more and more about. And I think that the programs that we have coming up on the Clear Voice are going to be really exciting. It's not always just going to be you and I. We have some amazing people lined up to come in and provide insight and experience and really just, I think, be impactful for a lot of people in our kind of sphere of influence.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the successful placements that Clear's had in the past. Most of them or all of them are listed on the website. So if there's a city trying to determine if they even want to call us to get a quote or talk about business. And they can go ahead and call some other cities and find out. So who do we have that we've placed recently?
I think kind of the exciting thing, James, is one of our very first recruitments when we established the firm was with Van Horn, Texas. I hope people know where Van Horn, Texas is, but it's an amazing community. And the interesting thing about that is it actually got us involved in the spaceport kind of thing, because Blue Origin is based in Van Horn, Texas. We were able to work on that city manager recruitment really early on as a company and get out there. And Van Horn is quite a ways away from any major city, but we were able to get a lot of really great candidates for that position. And that was one of our first ones. And then, we've also had the opportunity to place Dalton Rice in Kerrville, and with the recent events in Kerrville and Dalton's work down there, that has been impactful for that community. And Dalton is such a great leader, and I know that's a very impactful and unfortunate situation, but I'm glad that they had somebody like Dalton that was kind of leading the charge down there. And then kind of as we move through, I think we've had a lot of really successful recruitments. One of my favorite ones was most recently completed up in Columbia Falls, Montana. And I have to say, it's always really cool when you get to go to Glacier National Park as part of your work. Well, I'll be actually heading back up to Montana here in August to wrap up the Great Falls Deputy City Manager recruitment. And so that are two kind of out of state that we really like to highlight. Our Chief of Police recruitment with the city of Weatherford, we had 174 candidates for an assistant city manager position down in the San Antonio area. I think our reach is out there, and I think people, watching Clear and understanding what Clear is. Something I'm really proud of is our company was contacted and was able to work with CPS HR Consulting to hire their CEO. And, CPS HR Consulting has a long standing in the executive recruitment and municipal consulting sector. To have them, reach out and partner with us to do such an important part of what's going to be leading that company forward and trust us with that, I think is a really, really amazing thing. And even though we are competitors sometimes, what I always tell people is I always view competitors as a positive, because, I think the ability to get out and impact communities, whether we're selected or whether CPS HR is selected or some of our competitors, if those communities are getting the help they need to really bring in the leaders or help solve the problems that have been lingering in many of these communities, I think that's a positive thing. And I also want to kind of throw out there, when we first started the company, I reached out to Warren Hushmaker, and he's got Sumter Consulting down in Georgia. And he was very, very gracious in telling us the methods he'd used. He was about a year ahead of us in starting. And although we really don't compete directly very often, I really appreciate the fact that the more that we're in this, the more helpful we can be to communities. And I'm really proud of everything that's happened over the last 3 years with Clear.
And we've got several current recruitments going on, some amazing cities and some amazing opportunities. You want to talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of our favorite ones is for the city of Pflugerville, just because it's hard to get out of the habit of putting a P in front of everything once you've worked with Pflugerville. But that is for their planning and development service director position. It has a little bit of time left on it. We've had a real successful recruitment. We always are encouraging folks to apply. And then we did the city manager recruitment for Dalhart, and JJ Oznick's been out there about a year, but we've been engaged by them to help them recruit their EDC director. And that recruitment is ongoing, and really excited to be able to bring Dalhart some amazing EDC candidates that hopefully will impact and continue to grow that community. The city of Clyde, we've launched that city administrator position there, and right outside of Abilene, we placed the city manager in Merkel on the west side of Abilene, and now we're hoping to place a city administrator on the east side. And I'd encourage people to check out that opportunity. Clyde has a lot of really amazing things going and a lot of ability to grow. And probably one of my favorite positions we have open right now is the crisis center in the Bay City area has a training coordinator position open. And, having worked in law enforcement and like yourself, James, I understand the important work that the child advocacy centers do and the huge impact that they're making on communities and assisting victims. And so they're looking for a training coordinator that is TCOL certified, that can get in and help train, their staff and have the ability to really improve the response and investigative ability.
Yeah, that recruitment is also special to me. I know it's going to take finding the right person there, because that is a difficult job. I also worked at CPS in addition to law enforcement. So if I was, 20 years older, it might be something I'd be interested in. because it seems like a great opportunity for somebody who's already been there, done that, has that experience in child crimes, and maybe they don't need the highest paying job, but they need insurance to be paid for and to cover their daily expenses. And I looked earlier, and to get to Matagorda, which has 20 miles plus of beautiful beaches, I think it's 20 minutes from Bay City. That whole area is beautiful, and that's such a tremendous need because it's my understanding is they're going to be training internally, and they're also going to be doing community outreach and training for the community. That's what it takes to hopefully eliminate some of those things, is get that training out there, the things that are being done on the internet and parents just don't know. So hopefully we can find the right person to go in there and pick up that mantle and do all that education.
Yeah, absolutely. We love the fact that we get to serve the crisis center and try to help them find somebody for that position. We have some amazing recruitments that we'll be launching here in the coming weeks too. It'll be really good to continue to pay attention to Clear Career.
We've talked a little bit about where Clear came from and what we're doing now. What's the future of Clear? What's the next step?
As I'd mentioned, put a couple of people in place outside of Texas. Jeff Spivey is down in the Florida region now and is available to serve definitely people in the southeast portion of the country. Mark Shrives being up in the northwest. We're excited to have that opportunity. But we will have a booth for the first time at the ICMA conference coming up in October, and really hoping to let folks know across the country that we're there and able to serve their recruitment and consulting needs. Like I said, I think one of the things that set us apart is our team and just the ability to have people who have the experience in so many different roles to get in and really help collaborate on whatever need a city may have. I've mentioned that I've got a book coming out later this year, and that's going to talk about municipal leadership and 7 skill sets that municipal leaders will hopefully find helpful. I always tell people I'm not writing the way to lead an organization, but I'm writing a way to lead an organization and some skill sets that have helped me and a number of the people that I've worked with throughout the years. I think just being able to get in and have that conversation about how to continually grow yourself, but also with that, improve your organizational culture and really be impactful for the people that serve the communities that we work with.
Can you tell us the title yet, or is it still a work in progress?
Yeah, well, it's called 540 Leadership. And, I think, folks in law enforcement, at least here in Texas, will be really familiar with the 540 acronym. And, this is really just the ability to apply, 540 degrees to leadership and really look at those 7 skill sets.
Well, we got to get it out before Christmas. Sounds like a great stocking stuffer.
Absolutely.
We want to invite everybody to connect with us. Obviously, our website's got a lot of information, but we have a big LinkedIn presence, and that would be the best way to keep up with the things that are going on in and around the company and find the podcast. So we definitely want people to engage us there. And the podcast is basically on every platform that we can put it on. Save it, favorite it, rate it, and if you've got constructive criticism, you can email us and just tell us if you love it, then just rate it high, and we'll appreciate that. So, what else? Any parting words for us, Michael?
No, again, I appreciate all you do, James, as being our host, and I'm really excited about this podcast and the guests that you're going to have on, and just the continued impact that we're going to have in municipal government across the country.
It's been great talking to you, Michael. We also appreciate everyone listening today, and please check out our website at clearcareerpro.com or check us out on LinkedIn.